Hello, hello everyone. How are y'all doing today? Having a good time? I'll be honest here. I did intend to go live a little bit earlier, but I was having a lovely walkabout all morning, and lost track of time. So, oops. But welcome everyone here. Now, to make up for it, I have an absolute banger of a stream for you today. We're doing two things. Thing number one is we're going to finally talk about the digital library from the Video Game History Foundation. And then thing number two, we've got a lot of Dragon Age Origins to play. So we're going to do a little bit of both. It's going to be a good time. And this dude, I don't know why, but it was Banjo-Kazooie music. So if that explains it, that explains it. Tis the season for Banjo-Kazooie. Wait. It's always the season for Banjo-Kazooie. What am I talking about? So, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to hop straight on in. But if you are just tuning in, this is your first time, or you're coming in to hear just about the library, welcome everyone. My name's Adam. Here at Ludohistory, we do all sorts of history and games-related content. So whether that's looking at museums, whether that's learning about history together through games, whether that's, in this case, taking a look at a massive step forward for the accessibility of game preservation. We do all sorts of stuff, so that's cool to you. Make sure you hit the follow button. And if you want to support the channel, subscriptions are currently discounted, and they are very, very greatly appreciated, so do consider doing that. Terralingua? Hello, good afternoon. Hope you're doing well, friend. Let's just hop into it. So, have folks heard of the Video Game History Foundation before? Is that a thing people know? And from reasons other than me being very excited about them. Nope. Oh, this is a treat then. This is an absolute treat then. Alright. So, the Video Game History Foundation is a project that was founded, I think, in 2017, with the goal of preserving and making accessible a lot of game adjacent stuff. They, for the most part, don't preserve games themselves. They do a little bit, especially for old out of print games, but they largely work on like prototypes, source code, development materials, press materials, and magazines. So they kind of work in a slightly different niche than something like the International Center for the History of Electronic Games, which is very much preserving the games themselves. But yeah, they have done really cool, really spectacular work. Like, absolutely, absolutely insane. For instance, you know, they completely, from archival materials that they had collected, were able to completely reconstruct a scrapped in development stage of Sonic 2. Like, from the original design documents, they were able to completely reconstruct and make functional materials from Sonic 2. It's wildly cool. And so they do really important preservation work around some of these materials. As I said, the history of video games, our archives provide rare material for study, and our advocacy and educational work do their part in celebrating and discovering video game history. So they do some reconstructive work, they do a lot of really cool stuff, but they just announced an even cooler thing. They're a small organization, there's 2 full-time staff right now, but they do some really, like, this is what we're talking about today. The Video Game History Foundation Library. Obviously, if anyone doesn't know somehow, I have a master's degree in library and information sciences, and have done work specifically on digital assets and special collections. So this is like this is laser focused at me and me in particular. So we're going to take a look at it. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's they're collecting, how they're organizing it, and what platforms they're using to kind of showcase in more depth exactly how cool this is. Because, like, casual audience, right, or I suppose, non-archivist audience, it's pretty damn cool. To an archivist audience, significantly cooler. So, let's roll the tape.
Salvador, library director at the Video Game History Foundation. One of the most frequent questions we get.
This is largely what they're collecting, by the way. Look at these serials.
Video game history materials that you've been building. Well, for the last 2 years, we've been working on a solution to this problem. We're building a digital library platform where you'll be able to browse our archives from the comfort of your home without having to visit us out here in California. We've been working on this for a while now. We've been building out our systems. We've been cataloging.
Too quiet. That can be fixed.
Finally ready to show off. So in this video, we're
that
going
can
to
be
do a
fixed.
first look at what we've been building. Now, keep in mind that what we're showing you today is a work in progress. It's going to be a little unfinished, a little unpolished. Nothing you see in this video is final. But as long as we're all cool with that, then let's jump in.
It's very cool. They're doing good work. All right.
Before we get started, I want to talk for a second about why we're building our own library platform. Why not just upload everything to the Internet Archive or put it...
This is a very good question.
Which is a fair question. Since our founding, we've always had this idea...
Still inaudible? How the heck is it still inaudible?
Wanting to build a...
It is literally going into the red on OBS, but that's cool.
Digital-first game history library. Seriously, since day one. Here's a clip of our founder, Frank Cifaldi, talking about this all the way back in 2017 when he first launched our organization.
So what's your goal for sharing all this with people out there who are interested?
Sure. So we have this notion of building a digital library of these assets and these collections, which is a big ongoing thing because there are solutions out there, like the Internet Archive. We dump everything on there if we wanted to, or Moby Games or whatever. But we just don't feel that anything's quite hitting the needs that I would have as an historian, wanting to be able to search through a giant archive and find the information I want and be able to have things tagged appropriately. So we have this ongoing, massive, probably years long, to be honest, project to have this digital library.
Right.
For us, building a digital library is about having...
So let's stop there. They're going to explain more about what their thought process is there, but they honestly do it really well. You hear this a lot, right? Why not upload things to Google Books? Why not upload things to the Internet Archive? Why not upload things to yada yada yada? There's two reasons why, I'm typically resistant to that. First one is, broad speaking, discomfort with the monopolization of cultural heritage into the handful of a few, albeit a few, very well-intentioned and technologically robust systems. Because, if Google decides, say, Google Arts and Culture is no longer worth supporting, boom. Gone. Poof. Destroyed. So, it's leaving things up to risk. For the Internet Archive, the more likely problem is copyright, because they keep uploading copyrighted materials to the Internet Archive, and they keep getting taken down. And it's they should be on the Internet Archive anyway, but it doesn't do good for the integrity and trust in the platform and its longevity when mainstream book publishers keep issuing takedown notices because they keep storing and uploading large quantities of copyrighted material. Yeah. But yeah, right, it ultimately causes the exact same preservation issue that they're trying to solve with the Video Game History Foundation, right? So much texts related to early gaming history are on websites and material, platforms that have gone completely insolvent and gone shut down. Best practice for digital preservation is dispersed storage. So you have multiple copies of things on servers and in locations that are discontiguous from each other. So if one fails, you've got 2 more copies. And so uploading everything on the Internet Archive, instead of spreading things out onto multiple platforms with multiple copies, by and large, puts all your eggs in one basket. And if that basket fails, well, now we're back to square one, but with several years of effort gone down the drain. It's tough. Obviously, that is still a risk with what they're doing here. There was a Reddit AMA that someone asked what happens if the foundation goes insolvent, and the answer right now is they don't have an answer to that. So that still is a risk. But I like this solution of trying to maintain intellectual control and organizational control of the library versus relying on the Internet Archive or its sort of related projects, digital. If you're in Massachusetts, Digital Commonwealth, Historic New England, etc., etc. Hey, Magistressa, we are taking a look at the Video Game History Foundation's announcement of a new digital library, and I was just complaining about the Internet Archive. It's good, it's important, but I agree with them wholeheartedly that it was not the right choice for this.
Having a permanent home where all of our stuff will be digitally preserved. But that's not all there is to it. We also want it to be a place where we have control over our material and over the experience to make it into something tailored to video game history research. We love the Internet Archive, but it can be a bit of a free-for-all in terms of tens of millions of files floating around from different uploaders. And if we're using somebody else's platform, that makes it especially tricky to manage things like sensitive items that we can't make fully available to the public, or dealing with copyrighted material, which we frequently do. So we want to do better than just putting a bunch of files in a folder and hoping for the best. What we want to make is a resource, something that adds value to the things we're preserving, something that's going to be useful and easy for anyone studying video game history, whether you're an academic writing a book or a creator making a YouTube video.
Thank you for acknowledging me.
To show you what I'm talking about, let's check out the first part of all of this, our library catalog.
Yeah. Let's take a look at this library catalog.
Welcome to our library catalog. As you can see, the presentation is still pretty bare bones right now, but this is where you'll be able to browse
Still better than some
archives.
libraries I've seen.
Up here, you can access our collections, as well as browsing by subject or by name.
So, here we can get into more details. They have confirmed how they're doing this. So, this is just a dumb amount of work. Like, this is probably the easiest one to we are slightly zoomed in, aren't we?
And in our case,
hang on, please hold. Let's get the edge of the screen so you can actually see the Collections tab. The Collections tab, over here. Stop it.
Name can...
Thank you, YouTube. Very cool of you. The Collections tab, over here, is probably the easiest one to do, because you're using an existing platform that already organizes things based on collections. Doing this one, and this one require robust metadata creation. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but just if you doing this correctly is a lot of work that cannot be automated, sped up, even assigned to an intern. It's literally just manual labor. Luckily, there's some tools some standards that people can use to do it, so we'll talk about those a little bit on which ones they're using, because they happen to confirm that they're using Library of Congress controlled vocabularies. What that means, we'll explain in a bit.
It can be a person, it can be a company, whoever is attached to what you're looking for.
Oh god, metadata.
We also have record groups where we've organized some of our resources into discrete categories like magazines or press.
Cool. That's awesome. So this is okay. Let's actually do that now. So they said that they're using Library of Congress system. So these two are governed under controlled vocabulary, mostly, with exceptions. This is a resource known as the Library of Congress Name Authority file, which LCNAF. It's a resource developed by the National Archives, which is very helpful. And so you can just, check. You can just check. And it has structures, right? It has exact structures for how you organize a name. Typically, it's last name, comma, first name, open parentheses, date of birth hyphen date of death, close parentheses. Yeah, look, it's a .gov domain. What did you really want from it? But then you can also, of course, get lots of examples like corporate names. Mississippi River and Bon Terre Railway Company. Right? Stuff like that. So you can see all sorts of examples for what that looks like. Man. This is a better website. This at least from this decade. So there ends up being a lot of resources here, and provides a really structured way to, if you have someone's name, just make sure you always put that name that way in your metadata. Here's why. Unless if you are Google and have the most insane search, like, language parsing into search terms algorithm the world has ever seen, a search for Mark Twain and a search for Twain, comma, Mark is not going to turn up the same thing. So, right, the reason why is that, for the most part, a library search is going to start with the leftmost character, and it's going to go character, 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 character. And then there's a space, and it's like, okay, there's a word. We're going to search for that word in that order. And the more words you put in a row, the more if it's doing a left side string, it's going to look for that exact string in order. Sometimes it'll do like an unorganized search, or like a free search where it's like any of the words in this. It's going to pull up every resource that has any of those words in its search. If you have a controlled vocabulary with a structured metadata and the name is always the name, you can just tell it, if you see this string, right, this exact string, some of the variants of these names, instead search for named authority this to pull up all the resources that have that as the author. And it just works. The other one that they're doing is LC genre form terms. Library of Congress genre and form terms, which gives you a bunch of structures for what type of material it is, right? Not what it's about, but what it is. So, right, a book about horror movies would be a subject term, horror movies. The Exorcist will get a genre term, horror movie, to tell you, The Exorcist isn't about horror movies. It just is one. You just gotta have it classified as such. And that's what this record groups tab is. That's using Library of Congress genre and form terms with some addenda and alterations and customization to fit the specific needs of the media they're working with. And there is no good way to automate that. You literally have to manually type in, right, decide on, and then type in the metadata classifications to make these objects accessible. You see this on the end, and it's like, oh, that's easy. Right? Surely OCR tools or AI can help do that, right? No. No. Nothing speeds that up. You just have to do it. Anyway.
Materials. We also have a tab here for unprocessed materials. So it's going to take us a long time to catalog and digitize everything we have. So under this tab, you'll be able to see some of the collections we're in the process of working on, but aren't quite available just yet.
Amazing.
So if you really need to access something, we at least want to let you know what all we have that we're working on. We're using a platform for our catalog called Archive Space, which is the standard for archival management, and it lets us organize our collections in some really intuitive and useful ways.
So, Archive Space. Everyone uses Archive Space. Like, if you work in the archival industry, you know Archive Space. I've worked with it at a couple of institutions. Every special collections I know of uses it. It's good. It is when they say the industry standard, it is the industry standard for how you do this. Like, it is open source, which is very, very helpful, actually. It is regularly updated. It is compatible with most metadata standards. It is, frankly, actually fairly user-friendly. Like, actually fairly user-friendly for what it is. And it gives a lot of tools to help not only, like, create catalogs, right, to create a finding aid, but to also create exhibitions, kind of reorganize things, develop better search tools. It is genuinely very good. So if you've not seen them, or actually, if you look at any, let me just real quick. You can also put a skin on it. Right. That's Archive Space. That's all this is. Like, this is literally what Harvard uses for their archival materials. This is Archive Space with a fun skin on it. Have fun. Rock out. Obviously, this is the end user side, not the back end side. But there you go. If you want to know an institution that does this, literally Harvard. So, you know, in terms of who they're running with and what sort of space they're working in, they really are. Phil Zalvador has really made it clear, right? Does know the industry standards, which is not a surprise. He is a professional librarian. But also is really thinking about how those apply to games.
So let's dive into our collections. We're going to start out by showing you how we've cataloged video game magazines, which has been one of our big focuses these last couple years. We've cataloged over 7,000 magazine issues from around 200 different magazine series, which you can see here. So let's jump into a magazine that I think many people have heard of, which is Nintendo Power.
Woohoo!
So this is how we've organized magazines in our collection. On the left-hand side,
literally all you do
we
is
have
scan.
all the information about the magazine, such as what type of magazine
classic.
it is, who published it, when it was published, and some details about its history and content.
This is the most bog standard finding aid you can have, by the way. Chat, like, this. Let me pull up one to show you what I mean. I closed Halls for archival discovery. Let's say I don't know, Charles Sumner papers? Those should be fairly open access. Alright, Charles Sumner papers. Held at Harvard. Just casually reverse engineer. You don't need to reverse engineer their database. They're going to tell you what database they're using pretty soon. Don't, like, they use Preservica. I mean, yes, you have to pay money to get access to Preservica, but they use Preservica. Like, we don't need to overthink this. Anyway, right. If you look at how they structure this, and say how this is structured, you can see, right, it's... Oh, you mean the structure, not the management system? Well, fair enough. You can see, right, it is the exact same things. The collection organization there, the collection organization here. They've got a collection inventory that's going to give you more details. And since this is a physical asset management, right, this all reflects something physical that people can access. So, they have ways to request the things, though. If you visit Harvard, please don't hit these buttons. These buttons make us sad. And then if there is digital material, right, Harvard has it here. Since this is a digital library, this one, collection container inventory and requests, are going to instead link to another system, Preservica, which is going to make the physical object, or the digital version of the physical object, accessible. So the way, the requesting items, Harvard doesn't retrieve stuff item by item, they retrieve stuff box by box. So, requesting the individual letters, makes people sad. I don't have to worry about that with a digital, asset system, though, so we will simply leave it at, that was personal, that was a personal issue. Anyway.
And on the right-hand side here, we have a drop-down menu with every single issue of the magazine. We think this is a really good, intuitive way to browse through magazine issues.
And additional
There's
description.
also a drop-down box here for the various one-off issues Nintendo Power published over their run, or at least these are the ones we have in our collections so far.
Hooray.
You can also click into these individual issues to get more information about them, but Nintendo Power is a pretty simple example. Let's go to something.
So, one more note here on the additional description, though you can't super see it. This is the full finding aid, so this is gonna, right, technically this whole thing is a finding aid, but the additional description has, like, scope and content notes, more detailed series organization, a bunch of stuff that archivists really get into, and other people maybe don't need so much.
Something a little more complicated.
But it's good.
We're going to look at a magazine called Game Players, which is way more complicated than Nintendo Power is.
This is tough.
Let me just explain this really
I'm
quickly.
excited to...
Game Players was a series of magazines covering different game platforms. So there was a main Game Players magazine, but there was also a Nintendo edition of Game Players, and a Sega edition of Game Players, and a Game Boy edition of Game Players, and so on. There were about 6 different magazines called Game Players all running at the same time, and it's kind of a mess. They would sometimes share issue numbers. Sometimes magazines would change their name between issues randomly. At one point, a couple of them consolidated into a new magazine called Game Players Nintendo Sega, or Game Players Sega Nintendo, depending on how they were feeling that month. It's very confusing, and to our knowledge, nobody has actually figured out how this magazine is supposed to be organized, which makes it really difficult to reference individual issues or figure out which issue we're talking about.
I know, right, Peter? Right, Peter? It's the most cursed serial description I've seen in a long time. It is so unbelievably cursed. And that's right, given that publisher information for these serials is largely non-existent. When they're acquiring it, they have no organization to preserve. They just have to decide what makes sense. And that is a tough place to be for appraisal.
So, how do we even catalog something like this? Well, what we've done is we've created a much more detailed record for this magazine.
Okay.
It has information about the entire publication history of game.
There's a nice breakdown of the full abstract,
of the magazine,
the dings,
as well as the various companies that owned it over the years.
And that note right there, arrangement. This collection is organized by the subject area for each series. E.g., the Sega magazine, published by Signal Publishing, is listed as Game Players Sega, even though the magazine's name was changed midway through its run. So, right, that tells you what decision did the archivist, or in this case Phil Salvador, make while organizing this collection. Given that we don't have, right, it's if someone gives you a box of stuff and they're like, this is the order in which we kept it, you, as an archivist, keep it in that order as best you can. You don't rearrange things randomly. You don't be like, hey, this doesn't make sense, let's rearrange it. No. No. You keep things in the original order that the institution who created those records kept them in. That's not the case here, because the collection, that information is lost. The materials were not given as a single unit, they were not given by the publisher, and they were not, they did not keep that original order in the first place. So then you have to decide, and making the decision here based on the company of relevance, it's, like, that's, with a secondary thing by publisher, I think makes sense. Totally a valid choice. As long as you make that clear, you can almost do whatever you want.
We also have information in here about how we cataloged this magazine,
hey,
so it's easier for you to find specific issues. In our drop-down box on the right-hand side, we've organized it by the various iterations of the magazine. So, if you want to find, let's say, an issue of the Nintendo edition of Game Players, you can click through and find that one. On each record for each individual issue, if we need to clarify anything about,
later,
say,
1988.
how we figured out what date it was published, or if there's something unusual about the title of this issue.
Wait, that's cursed. What do you mean, estimated date? Serials, the whole point of you is that you're supposed to make it clear what issue it's from.
Note it in the
God
record.
damn it.
We think all this additional structure and context is the best way to present a magazine as complicated.
This is also cursed. This is the first issue of the relaunched Nintendo edition of Game Players. The magazine's numbering restarted with this issue. As a result, 2 separate Nintendo issues of Game Players are labeled Volume 1, Number 1. That is utterly cursed. Thank you, Game Players.
We think we're the first people to figure out how this magazine was actually organized and published, and we think this is a great way to share that information with you. Because we're adding all this rich metadata to our catalog, it's going to let you do some really powerful filtering. So for instance, if you just want to find Sega magazines that were...
Hang on. I know he's going to give me an example. I just want to take a look at what things we have here. So, we have subject headings, periodicals, multi-platform gaming magazines, computer games magazines, promotional publication, computing magazines. So these are all, right, the subject terms that have been pulled up under the search that they did in Browse Collections. Right, that's what they did. This is a Browse All Collections, by the way. So this is going to pull up finding aids for collections that have these subject tags involved. This is not individual issues. This is going to pull up the entire serial. Language, I'm surprised they don't have English as a language filter. I guess they're assuming that as a default, and then they're listing things in other languages that they have cataloged. But I would still like if you wanted to search, as that expands, as this becomes less US-centric, if they... It's weird that that's not listed. Anyway, Future PLC, Future US, Ziff David, right, all very controlled authority names, etc., etc.
Published between 1999 and 2000. You can go over here and insert our date range. In this case, it's 1999 to 2000.
And then you can do search things.
And then we can narrow it down by subject. Do a drop down here and select Sega magazines. And there we go. We have 2 magazines here, both covering the Dreamcast. So if you wanted to narrow it down just to Dreamcast magazines, you could search for Dreamcast, or you could do it this way. Our goal is that eventually you'll be able to link to scan to these magazines, like you can do here. If you click on this magazine, it takes you to our digital archive platform, where you can see here we have the entire magazine available with full text searching in browser.
Ta-da!
Now,
Ta-da! The fact that they got OCR to work on Preservica is nice.
not every magazine is going to be up here at launch. Partially that's because we don't have everything up yet and it's taking a long time to process everything. But also because
how long
we don't
does it
have
take to
everything
process
scanned
everything?
yet. So for some rare items that might be more difficult for us to scan, we may not have digital versions of those magazines. But at the very least, we want to make sure you know what we have in our collections. Next, we're going to look at our special collections of development materials, and this is the really juicy stuff.
To scan something, and then to process something once it's been scanned in such a way that you can actually make it accessible. Right, they said not everything's been scanned, and of the stuff that has been scanned, not all of it has been processed. Which I deeply respect. Because, remember that whole metadata thing that I was talking about? How you have to, manually type in all those subject terms and your name authorities and make sure it's all formatted correctly and decide on the arrangement and physically move all the boxes around to get it all arranged in that way. And write up the scope and content notes and do all that. Yeah, you have to import that all from archive space into the digital hosting platform and the digital containers, and then make sure that all of the things in that share the item level, that as you have an item, you have all of the item level data incorporated, and on top of that, all of the collection level data imported, and make sure that it imports correctly into every single item. Do any tweaks and edits that need to happen for the fields that the platform has available, and then make sure that everything plays nice going both directions. And that's the easy version of it. That's the quick and simple version of how you do that work. Yeah, yours are in institutional archive for the organizations, 3 people. 7 boxes covering every single jingle song radio performance. Throwing multi-paper scanner, putting them in Microsoft folders on the shared. Yeah, that's what we call the scuffed version, and I salute you for it. As a veteran of the scuffed version, proud of you.
These are materials that we've gotten from game developers and publishers that give us an inside
This is
look
where things
at how
really
games
get
were made.
bonkers.
Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Mark Flitman papers. Mark Flitman is a veteran game producer who's worked for publishers including Konami, Atari, Mindscape, and Midway, and he graciously allowed us to digitize his materials. We can't wait to share his work and his career with you. Here's the record for the Mark Flitman papers, and as you can see, it's even more detailed than the records we had for our magazines.
This is special
In this
collections.
record, we have
This is
information
working,
about where these materials came
formats,
from and
doing
what
weird stuff.
types of items are included, along with information.
Okay. Yeah, there's a hint. 55.9 gigabytes of data for this one person's papers.
About how we process this collection and what you can and can't use these materials for.
Yep.
Our
The majority of material in this collection was appraised by the Video Game History Foundation staff at the time of digitization. Okay. Additional items were appraised while the collection was being processed. Number of materials related to personal life or unrelated to his work producing video games was omitted, though the raw files had been maintained if the materials were already digitized. Due to privacy concerns, email files were also omitted but may be reassessed. Cool. Several CDs were burned in duplicate and triplicate. If the discs were identical, only one copy was accessioned, though the disc images have been maintained, etc. Personal identifying information has been redacted. Some video recordings have been truncated. Remove home foot. Yep. Nice. I love how transparent they're being.
Questions about the Mark Flipman collection, they'll be answered by this record. Again, as before, we have a drop-down menu on the right-hand side here, and this time it's organized by what companies Mark Flipman worked for. To give you an idea of the kind of materials we have in
55 gigabytes of video, you're right, that's not that much. Especially if it's, you know, modern video.
In here, you can see Mark Flipman worked on a handful of specific projects, as well as categories for business documents, memorabilia, promotional items, and...
Interesting. I wonder if... That's weird. So, just as a thing here, I would normally link, like, specific games into the business papers, and the business papers would just kind of be organized, or kind of game projects broadly, like series 1 game projects, sub-series specific paper projects under that, or I guess in this case sub-series 1, sub-series 1A. I don't know. It gets complicated real fast. I don't hate how they've organized it. That's just interesting.
And reference materials used in the making of licensed game projects. Let's take a look at one item. We're going to look under Tiny Toon Adventures, and we're going to look at the color guides that were used during the development of Tiny Toon Adventures for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
This is... Oh, you know what it is? You know why they did this? They did this because this is probably how... There's two options. Option 1, this is either how Mark Flipman stored his papers, because if it is that, then you just stick with that. Right, if he's like, oh yeah, so this is the stack of papers related to this is the stack of papers related to this is the stack of papers related to everything else. But, the other option, this is probably a prediction on how they expect people to use it, is that they're not expecting people to just kind of trudge through the entire archival collection of game correspondence at Konami. That they are specifically thinking, you know, I'm guessing users are probably interested in specific projects, and so we're going to keep, kind of make the most famous, most well-known, most impactful projects most visible, and kind of make them uniquely visible within the time at the company. So that way, if people are here specifically to look for those, we make that clear, we make that easy to find, we let them move on with their day. So sort of prediction of user behavior and the structuring of the archive in a way that reflects that? I mean, if that's what they're doing, that's really cool, that's really smart of them. I don't know, though. I'd be really curious to talk more about it.
And again, like with magazines, we have a link here that takes us to where this item is in our digital archive. Clicking on it takes us over here, where we can view the item in browser. And actually, this is a good segue to talk more about our digital archive. This is the other half of our library platform. This is where all of our digital content lives, like this document.
Because
our digital archive...
If you don't know, archive space is, for all it being really good, really cool, really fun, cannot host image and video files. It doesn't link to the actual... Right, it can't hold the actual surrogate. It's not built for that. That's not what it does. So, if you're using... Right, it doesn't do transactions. It doesn't really... It isn't great at tracking movement within a building. It can do it, but it's not good at it, or super good at it. And so usually you have to link to another software to either physically track requests for material or to host the digital material. They're doing that in the second thing.
Archive is powered by a platform called Preservica, which lets us preserve and present this content at the same time. For the library nerds out there, this is an OAS compliant archive. I should probably...
Alright, let's talk. This is Preservica. So, they are one of the most popular, one of the most common digital surrogate hosting sites. They're hardly the only one. Lots of, museums use a completely different set than archives do. archives tend to be using Preservica. The other main one that tends to get used, the one that tends to get used the most in museums is called Past Perfect, but it does a lot of the same process. This one is not open source. There is a cheapo version for small libraries, but it is really, right, it is meant to be more robust, but it is also very not open source. Yeah, a lot of, right, so they've got the starter one, which is free, but it's super bare bones. Professional is where a lot of smaller institutions are going to be using it. There's also another version, let's see. But actually, you can see some of the folks that use it. Like, there's so many places that use it. There's also a subset of it, right, called Rediscovery, or Rediscovery, that does a lot of the same things, that tends to be more targeted specifically at museums. They seem to be using the main one here, but you know, it's pretty cool. There's actually a lot to like about this. They're not, the company, assuming the company doesn't get bought out, go bankrupt, or other stuff, is really not at risk. Because they're an institutional vendor, their entire business model is based on, you know, trust, and continuing to be super reliable. So, while there's issues of, you know, roll out features that nobody particularly asked for, everyone does that. For the most part, they're actually really, really good, and are one of the industry standards. Like the Massachusetts State Archives uses Preservica. The European Commission uses Preservica. The National Archives uses Preservica. So, like, if they screw over the users, quote unquote, you're literally screwing over several major government bodies. They're not gonna do that. Right? That would be self-sabotage of the ultimate flavor, and they have been doing this since, like, the 90s. They're actually very good, they're very reliable, have a lot of respect for them. I don't like all of the features in Preservica. It's a little bit, there's some ways where it's pretty limited, they talk about it later in the video, but as far as it goes, right, there's the site. It's pretty easy to take a look at what features they can do, and it's pretty easy to see why they choose this.
Let me explain what that means for other folks. So here is a terrifying flowchart of what Oasis.
Yay! Terrifying flowcharts. Hang on, let me hit you. Let me hit you with the full version of the terrifying flowchart. Let's see if I can find the exact one in full version. That's the simplified version. This is a simpler, this is a slightly different, but equally cursed iteration. Oh, that did not do what I hoped it would. Hang on. Please do the thing correctly. There you go. Isn't it pretty? Let's see actually if that's saying the same things. God, you truly can't read that flowchart at all. That's just... It is completely cursed. Hooray. Yeah, it's fully cursed. Look, don't worry about it too much.
But basically, this is the standard for digital preservation, and it means...
Yeah, flowcharts are a lot. You can see, right, it moves basically the way this works is it starts over here with producers, it goes through the sort of creation, records management, procedures, on lifetime of use storage, etc., flowcharts. At this point here, it passes into the care of the archive. And so there's the rules of how an archive stores things. And then at this point, right over here, this is like preservation needs. Over here, this is administrative needs. And when it passes this point, then it starts thinking about how you deliver that to consumers. It's really cool. It's really cool. Yep. Was it Open Archive Services? Yeah. Basically, right, OAIS is the structure there. So it's the Open Archives Initiative Service. Hang on, let's see if I can find it. OAIS flowchart. Let's see if I can find this exact one. I believe in me. Chat, do you believe in me? You shouldn't believe in me. It's looking like it's not going to super duper work. Open Archival Information System. That's what that acronym is. I remembered it totally. It's been a couple of years since I've worked with OAIS flowcharts specifically. Let me open up that one directly. Cool. Of course that's in a bloody PDF. Well, I definitely planned this ahead of time, right? Right. This is again going to be the simpler version of what everything means.
That we're making.
But the simple version. There we go. The simple version. Company side stuff is here. They ingest it. You have preservation, administrative, and storage stuff, along with, you know, storage vendors and storage infrastructure, intellectual property and rights management concerns up there, and then moves over to consumer sides there. This is the simple version. What a nice, convenient flowchart that's not at all cursed. Please observe the full version. And realize that archivists don't... Archivists have to deal with a lot, guys. Be kind to your local archives.
Making sure our files are being processed, preserved, and documented responsibly for the long term. Let's zoom out for a bit on the Mark Flipman collection and show you how this works. We'll back up a couple levels here.
Yeah. Yay, big nested level things.
Here's the record for the Mark Flipman papers, and look at that. There's all our wonderful metadata we had.
I'm gonna lose it. Just hang on. Hang on. I just want to compare. I just want to show you all a comparison. I want to show you all comparison from
the overall
a very that was not the one I wanted to do. There it is. Complete archive, thank you. So this is the Massachusetts digital archive. I just want to compare the oh, there we go. I want to compare these two. For say, I don't know, COVID-19 materials, just because they're at the top of the list. So this is about the same level, right? We're not looking at items, we're looking at the collection. So we have a summary. We've got record details. We got title, creator, description, date, type of resources, format, extent, subject, language, citation, rights, access restrictions, terms of use. They have Title, name, 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 name. Dates, date expression, language, conditions governing access, conditions governing reproduction, subject, 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 scope and contents. Bro, what? That's so many add metadata field clicks. Preservica only has like 5 fields by default. You have to go add metadata field, add metadata field, add metadata field. It's tough.
You can use the digital archive to browse materials if you only want to see what we have available digitally. We have a bunch of different content.
I don't
We
recommend
already showed
it.
you some documents, so
Navigating
let's take a look at some
Preservica's
of the other items we have in the Mark Flipman collection
sometimes
as well.
pretty annoying. So I don't
For
recommend
instance, we
navigating
can show
in
you
Preservica.
images. This is a scan of Mark Flipman's pass to E3 1996.
Woohoo!
And you can see up here we have the same metadata we had earlier with our dates, subjects, as well as information about how the materials can be used.
That's more reasonable.
We have audiovisual assets, like audio. In this case, this is the demo music that was used in the making of King's Quest V for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Absolutely amazing.
We can also show you videos, such as this footage from E3 2000, which we shared with you earlier this month.
God. Fucking wizardry converting old video files to modern formats so that they run in Preservica. Just for the record. Video. I want to see if I can do this like type of resource text. Video MP4. Right, because you have to convert things to MP4s in order for them to show up. And then when you load one up, it sucks that it's slow, and you get something like this. Right. You can run it. It's fine. Same thing. Same thing. Really looks very similar because it's the same platform. Type resource video / MP4 format moving image. And yeah, it runs basically it's like Panopta or some similar one. But remember, this is from 2000. This was probably a VHS tape. Right? Right? So they're taking a VHS tape. And they have to re-record it basically. Right? The way you reformat VHS tapes is you run the VHS tape while recording it. And in order to like fucking, it's probably not a Betamax tape. Blessedly probably not a Betamax tape, but it's probably like it's probably like, yeah, home video VHS. So you need the hardware with the recorder to go run the files to reformat them. Yay!
Now these are all fairly basic items. Documents, images, AV materials. But our digital archive platform
also, yeah,
lets us do some more complicated
easy
things
mode
as well.
Well,
For instance, we can let you explore disk images in your browser.
This is wizardry. The fact they got this
Let's
to
back
work
out of
is
the Mark Flipman
actually...
papers for a second, and let's take a look at one of the press CDs we have from GamePro magazine.
I'm curious whether they have any format. I want to check. If I click on that, I'm just real curious how they do the search. Okay, delete filter. Let's see. Format. I'm really curious if we have disk images. Documents, image, audio, paintings, applications, video DVD, open reel audio tapes, QuickTime video, cyanotypes. Well, that's fun and exciting. That is a hard no. Also, why are these not organized alphabetically? Why are these not organized alphabetically? It's the Massachusetts State Archives. They've got stuff going back a very long time. There's some cyanotypes in there. Don't worry about it.
This is a collection of CDs containing art that publishers sent to GamePro to use in their magazine. So this is the highest quality version of some of this art you'll be able to find. We're going to look at a CD down here for the From Software game King's Field 2.
The one I was showing you is the Massachusetts
If you go
State
into the
Archives.
Files directory, you can see the contents of the disk as they were originally structured on the disk itself.
This is bloody
Let's
insane.
click in here and look at this drawing called The Dude.
The Dude.
Evidently that was the name they chose for the protagonist of King's Field 2.
Hell yeah. Look at that man. Look at him go.
Our preservation system automatically migrates images to modern formats, so you can...
Hey, Wolfie. Hey, Wolfie. Wolfie, you should take a look at that sword. It's definitely not cursed, I promise. Totally. Uh-huh. He's such a guy.
view them in browser. But don't worry, it does preserve the originals too. As I mentioned, our system lets us show some really complex digital materials that we might otherwise have trouble showing you. One of the cool items we have from Mark Flitman is this Executive Review CD, which contains a website that was shown to executives at Midway Games back in 2001, updating them on the status of various projects they were working on, such as Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. If we presented this CD the same way we present other CDs in our collection, as a directory of files, that's not really an ideal way to browse a website.
It gets
but with
more
this
and more
new
insane.
system, we can present a website as a website.
How? What? That's not something, as far as I know, Preservica lets you do. I've never found something like that. But yeah, they have a website emulator in Preservica that they are running their CD websites through.
You can even access the documents that were included on the CD. So if you're a game historian who wants to dig through some spreadsheets showing game development timelines or organizational charts, we think you're really gonna like this.
It's so damn cool.
You
Like,
might have
how
noticed
did they...
another item included on all these CDs called Manifest.
Also, this is lovely.
This contains a list of every file on the disk, along with its size, date modified, and a checksum of the file, along with a checksum of the disk image itself. In some cases, we aren't able to share the contents of some CDs, either because there's sensitive or copyrighted material,
this is how they're
or
avoiding
because,
the lawyers'
frankly, we
suits.
don't want to get somebody in trouble. But we still want you to know what it is we're preserving.
Right, that's
you
how
can
they're
use these
doing
manifest files to verify the contents of a disk and check,
Don't worry,
for
they
instance,
work
whether
with...
a certain build of a game has already been dumped,
They've
or
worked
whether
with
files
fairly
in a
big
pre-release
companies,
version of a game might
and
be different
some
from the final
really
version.
good cultural
This
heritage
tool
lawyers.
for generating these manifests is something called Curator, and it was developed for us by DRX, the founder of the game prototype dumping community Hidden Palace. We hope it's going to be useful not just for our collections, but for the video game preservation community in general.
So
Now,
yeah,
for some
just-
CDs, there's...
If it was not clear, so they custom built a lot of these tools, some of these more custom tools for the more complicated disk imaging stuff. If
really
that part
no
is not
way we
clear
can show you the
from that.
contents very well in browser right now. For example, this trade show CD from Infogrames has an interactive Windows 95 program on it, and we don't really have a good solution to that right now.
That's fair.
In these cases,
No.
if it's something that was meant for public consumption like a press CD, we're going to be mirroring the CD on the Internet Archive. our preservation system doesn't really support downloads the way we need to right now, so we think putting it on the Internet Archive is a good compromise.
That's also true.
Although not everything will be openly available on our digital archive, we will still be preserving the original unredacted files. So if you're doing a targeted research project,
So yeah, by the way, if you don't know, Preservica just lets you make a flag that says this is not accessible. So you're able to keep the full thing while setting flags that sort of lock that little box so that people from the outside can't get into it. In order to preserve copyright materials, while also not accidentally making publicly or copyright materials accessible to the public. It's tough.
may be able to work with you to retrieve the original files if you need them. Now, this is where everything comes together. We have a digital archive that contains both magazine scans and development materials. And now we can search all of them at once.
Yeah, you can. Archive
As an example, let's search
so we're going
for
back to Archive.
Marvel 2099.
Actually, we're staying in Preservica right now.
This is a famous unreleased game that Mark Flipman worked on, and we have his design papers for the game in our collection.
So that's in Preservica.
So when we search for this, not only do we get all of Mark Flipman's materials from when he worked on the game, we also get magazines that mentioned Marvel 2099, and we can sort by what type of content we're looking for.
Yep.
This is why we think this platform is going to be a great experience for video game historians. Once we start populating the library with content, the search results are really going to be rich.
By the way, you know why these search results are rich? That is a perfect title. Like, it is so easy to make bad titles for web files. Right. How many people have a final project, parentheses 2, close parentheses, .docx on their computer? How many people have more than one final project, parentheses 2, .docx on their computer? I'd never, we're responsible people who would never do that. Yep, totally. Hi, yeah, we are, I have, I think, five file project, parentheses some number. But right, if you're preserving that file name in this organization, it's bloody fucking useless, right? You can't, a search like this will not find any of those things, right? We've just got nice little operators here. Search this exact string, right? You're not free searching. You're not looking for Marvel or you're not looking for Marvel or 2099. You're looking for the specific string Marvel 2099. And then they know that their materials that are related to that in the title field have that string so that they are able to be found. Yeah, so are mine. Well,
we hope you enjoyed this first look at our library system. We're really excited about
all
opening
but
this up to people. And if you're a game researcher,
in the
maybe you're already getting some research ideas
documents.
just from watching this demo. So, what did you think? Like, seriously, what did you think about this? We've been working on this whole thing in a bubble for a while, and we want to hear from game historians and other game researchers about what you like about this. What's missing? What kind of materials do you want to see in here? What features are important to you? We might not be able to act on all of your feedback, but we want to get a feeling about how you feel about this. I hate to say this, but let us know in the comments below. We're planning to launch our digital library sometime next year, but in the meantime, we're going to keep rolling out new content this month to show you what we're up to at the Video Game History Foundation. Thanks for watching.
There you go. Isn't it so cool, guys? I am so happy that we've got this. Like, obviously, I'm biased. I have a master's degree in libraries and archival stuff. Technically, it's in cultural heritage, but it was primarily archives. So, you know, it's they have used archival standard tools with really good customization as a really clear audience image. I am so bloody excited. Like, they've said, right, their research has suggested 87% of like video games are inaccessible now. Just across the board, video games. Poof, gone. Can't play them. That number is far more catastrophic for development materials, prototypes, press releases, and other sort of paratextual things that exist around but are not physically part of the final game. And yeah, right? What a good bit of communication. Like, they knew the fact that they do have that archives experience and special collections experience, I think, really helped them communicate, like, where are the limits of what we're doing, where do our tools kind of run dry, and that's super cool. I'm really happy with that. Anyway, Faith, thank you for the gifts up to Lidsill, and Daydream Beyond, welcome, welcome. I have not seen that show. What's it about? Man. The other limitation that they said is that they're primarily working with, like, the older history, like 80s, 90s, 2000s. And they're primarily working with these paratextual archival materials rather than the final games. But still, this is so cool. And, especially the fact that they're not working with, making access... They don't emulate software. Right. They're not emulating copyrighted software expressions. They're making accessible archival materials around the software. Should protect them pretty far from the usual Nintendo lawyers. Which makes me happy. It makes they do good work. I'm thrilled that they're doing this, and it's pretty cool. Oh, it's an alternate view of, like, change in history. Shows how historic inventions and technology has affected humanity. That is interesting. I'll have to take a look at it. See how much I see how much I agree, because there's some of those types of shows where I'm like, are you sure on that? But I will certainly have to take a look. There comes with the territory of sometimes you get too into history and then material that simplifies things in useful ways you end up nitpicking to death instead of having fun with. I'm recovering from that. Anywho, we're gonna take a very quick ad break here, so that I can switch the category, get the game booted up, all that stuff, because we got some Dragon Age Dragon Age Origins to play. I definitely know what game I'm doing. Good lord. Chat, my brain's fried. Skull and Bones killed me. I'm sorry. Oh, God. That's okay. We're gonna have a great time. You're allowed, you work with Viking Age Norse. Mandrasa, yeah, you're right. I take back my apology. But no, we're gonna put back on some music, and give you all some quest nails while I get things switched around. And then we'll boot up some Dragon Age, and we'll go take a look at some dwarves, who definitely are not going to be Norse coded, and definitely won't do that. Yeah, Chikista, you're right. Skull and Bones, certainly one of the games of all time. A lot of people enjoyed watching me ramble about it, but oh boy, that sure was a video game that we played. How close are we to the finishing line for Dragon Age? Not far, but not close either. I'll tell you more after the break.